this very, very special session off. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special leadership series, part 1, with the amazing Julia Vargiu. How did I pronounce that?
Perfect.
Vargiu. Okay.
It's like you're Italian from Sardinia.
Julie and I have known each other for a few years now, and this is the first time I've successfully pronounced your name correctly. So it's a great day in my world. Julia wears a few hats, responsible for the pitch. What's that?
The Ouch Factor.
The Ouch Factor. Yeah, so the Ouch Factor report, as well as a very, very successful business in terms of M&A for agency. And today she's going to kick off one of a 2-part series. The first one is how to get fit for sale. So as an agency owner, how to get fit for sale. And the second part, which will be on October 2nd, will be fit for scale. So that's mergers, acquisitions, and roll-ups. So that means that if you want to sell, this is how you do it. And then in a couple of weeks' time, if you want to buy, if you want to merge, if you want to roll up, that's how you do it. So without further ado, I'm going to amazingly hand over to Julia, who's going to take over. And of course, there's a lot of content to get through. So Julia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Delighted to be here and see everyone here. This first part on how to get fit for sale is a delight to share. I am Julia Vargiu, the Director of Australia for SI Partners. So who is SI? We're actually a growth consultancy and mid-M&A advisory firm that's building value for agencies, consultancy, tech services firms, really those that are at the forefront of the digital economy. We've launched in London over 20 years ago. We've completed over 200 deals just in our space of the creative marketing media consultancy space. It's safe to say that we're doing a deal somewhere in the world every 3 to 4 weeks and know over 1,000 of the different acquirer relationships of who's best and what they're looking for. Some of our recent deals, which you're welcome to have a look at on our deal page, will give you a lot of information about what's happening and what's the information behind the deals and why. Ryan Cap, which included Rival Media, was one that we did last year in November. And here are a few relevant Australian deals that you would have heard of. In the context of today, what's good news is that we are seeing that acquirers are continuing with their growth plans, and we're seeing M&A accelerate. In terms on the owner founder side, the successful ones are actually having a greater appetite to sell. We are finding that in terms of the attributes, what the attributes that acquirers were looking for are pretty much unchanged today. And you always want to keep in mind that any good business is attractive in all markets. So we, of course, are having a bit of a turbulent financial year with the inflationary economy and client budget cuts in housing, of course, is making growth difficult and creating a bit of uncertainty. So I thought I'd start with how to maximize the value of your agency. What is it that are the building blocks of value? So essentially, you want to look at, having the right offer, which is it a contemporary offer? Is it future fit? Having the right clients, which we'll talk about in more detail, that being underpinned by a strong, incentivized, loyal management team and systems and processes that make you really efficient. Add that to good profit and good year-on-year growth, and that really defines the levers that create your value. Now, you don't need all of them to be going in the right direction, but you're going to need most of them. And so if you ask yourself what makes you attractive to a buyer, or how to tell if you've got a business that gives you, choice, what you really need to be in order to be fit for sale is a few things going at the same time. So The valuation for the most part is always going to be based on profitability and margin. This is followed by your growth. The deal driver, what makes you attractive and desirable, is often your capabilities, your offer, the management, and the client spread. So we are seeing, though, a little bit of shifts so that growth is always able to attract buyers, and profit does increase your valuation. But we are seeing over kind of the last 12 to 18 months that there's been much more of a focus on profit than growth for most of the acquirers. Now, when we think acquirers, we're really talking about those international acquirers that might have a domestic business operation, but head office and their M&A departments are typically overseas, mostly in the Northern Hemisphere. When we're talking about what gives you the best valuation and multiples, this is really the framework. You, of course, can sell a business at any level. It's just what type of buyers would be able to look to acquire you. So in terms of profitability, we say that 18% EBITDA is the bare minimum. Most want to see 20%. And it's really that this profitability gives you choices. You want to be able to show sustained profits that are consistent. So, at least an average of, minimum 15 to 18% over 3 years, ideally 20, as I said. And the problem with Australia is scale. So we tend to find that there are a lot of agencies doing $1 million in EBITDA, but for the international acquirers that are going to give you a better valuation multiple, they need to see at least a minimum of about 2 million EBITDA, which can be quite hard to achieve unless you're at like 40 to 50 staff doing about 8 to 10 million in turnover. So growth is quite important to be able to demonstrate consistent organic growth. Ideally, again, you want that 20% year on year. You could probably get away with 15%. And that year on year growth ideally needs to be seen for about 3 years, although, of course, acquirers realize that the last year or so was a bit tricky. So you might be able to get away with some realistic and attractive forecasts. Scalable business structure is very important so that as you grow, you have the capacity and the team to grow with you. Any unique IP is useful, and essentially that sustained growth forecast that you can substantiate. Mitigating risk is quite important when you're thinking about your client spread. What we do find is that acquirers get a little bit nervous if you have any client that's over, say, 20 or 25% of your gross profit. We do see quite a lot of agencies that have a large client, so that client concentration of anything over that 25% can be a little bit tricky or seem to be risky for acquirers. You want your clients to be blue chip or essentially contemporary so that they are, again, future fit. They're in attractive sectors. It's not a bad idea to spread out your clients. So you have maybe a global client, some regional clients, some sector spread, so that, again, it de-risks. Direct and sustained client relationships is quite important, and to be able to show that you have predictable or reoccurring revenue streams. Even though there's a lot of projects out there and fewer contracts, there's some quite clever ways of showing reoccurring revenue streams. A management team that's really giving you breadth and depth to your business is important. Acquirers are looking for committed, often incentivized management and shareholders, one that's really fully formed and scalable, where the client relationships aren't held with just one person, but they're spread amongst the team, and that you also are developing a depth of talent beyond the leadership. Strong retention record of your staff is important, and really having a contemporary response to the macro factors that we're seeing emerge since the pandemic. The offer is really what acquirers use to find you the most attractive, because acquirers are really driven by their strategic needs. So if your one focus is to build a contemporary offer, this will really help you with your survival and your growth. In terms of what they're looking for, anybody that has more of a strategic or consultative offer that they would see as a high value service that can access the C-suite and influence the executive leadership of your client, it really is quite advantageous. They're also looking for contemporary digital skills, data and tech-enabled consulting services, those that offer measurable outcomes and have diversified revenue streams. And one way that you might be able to manage, get a measure of where you are, is we often use the GP per head. We tend to find that if you look at all of your FTEs and you divide it by your GP, you're going to be able to see what the GP per head is. And typically we see that a high value service, that cutoff would be at 200,000 per head or higher. That's quite important to the consultancies as their GP per head can be even higher than that. And finally, systems and processes. So how scalable are your processes? If you're prepared to grow, will the front office, tech and your documentation follow suit? Do you have the ability to find and train talent quickly? We are in a state where there's been quite a lot of retrenchment, which has given a bit of correction to the high salaries that everyone was having to pay over the last couple of years to keep staff. I think with that correction, it's become more of an employer market, so we're able to see some terrific talent at slightly more reasonable salaries. But I'm sure the salary survey that you're about to complete will tell us more. Your back office, do you have a sales pipeline that's scalable, and your ERP, your finance and commercial reporting all needs to be nice and tidy. So we often ask people, did you start your business with the end in mind? And not many have, if we're honest. So we tend to go, well, do you have a plan for your end game in terms of what you'd like to achieve, where you are in the journey of your business? So one way to do that for yourself now is to understand, well, how old are you now? And what age would you like to be when you don't have to work for a living, but you choose to? And if you think about that, you could plan to be anywhere from 5 to 9 years until that end in mind, which might include selling your business, actually arrives. It could take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to achieve that scale that we talked about for the international buyers and who are looking for 2 million in EBITDA. You want to make sure that you leave a good 9 months, possibly up to 12, to complete the deal with the potential growth partner and begin the integration. And then depending on your deal structure, it could be anywhere from 2 to 5 years to see the completion of an earnout. So anywhere from 5 to 9 years from now, you could have sold your business. We do believe too that not everybody wants to sell to exit. A lot of people want to just have a great business. So it's important to realize that a healthy business that's successful and has all those levers we discussed early going in the right direction is really the same as a business that's ready for sale. Now, the great news is that you can be fit for sale without ever having to sell, but knowing that you're fit means that it gives you options if and when you ever become ready or a situation arises where you need to make some changes. I thought I'd explain the sales process. So a lot of people aren't really clear on the details of it, and there might be some misnomers out there. You need to ask yourself, how ambitious are you? Are you wildly ambitious to grow? So you're thinking of how do we double from 1 million EBITDA to 2 million in 12 months, which is absolutely doable if you have the ambition. You might be mildly ambitious, where you're quite happy with marginal incremental growth, and that 20% year on year, which is absolutely fine and attractive, is what suits you. Some might be wavering ambition, could be a bit tired. You've had the business, 10, 15, 20 years. It might have had a bit of bad luck with some clients or some key staff leaving, and you're really looking on stabilizing in order to stay alive till 25, as a couple of wavering businesses have shared with us. It's really about understanding the timing of when you want to go to market and what you might be looking for. So we've come up with this helpful little chart that explains if you were to sell now, some of the benefits of that could be that you could de-risk to a limited expense, to a limited extent, what the future might be holding. There is quite a lot of heat in the market, so both the strategic acquirers and PE-backed businesses are active. The buyers are actively seeking key capabilities and skills, which would usually include what you're offering. And the buyers could actually help you deliver that growth forecast so you achieve, an attractive earnout. The cons, of course, is that you could be seeing a lower valuation and multiple overall. You might see a lower value up front due to potentially a lack of a track record. And your current scale could actually limit quite extensively, depending on how small you are, the number of buyers that you have an option to talk to. So if in terms of timing, you were looking at potentially going to market based on your FY24 year-end numbers and go to market in spring, say next month, and you were earning $1 million in EBIT, you could see that your estimated enterprise value of what you'd see over a 3-year earnout would be about a 3 or 4 times multiple. Yet, if you put on your ambitious hat and decided to deliver a more attractive or ambitious forecast, and you gave yourself, say, 2 years to do it, you would see significantly higher value, and you would have a much larger portion of your value paid up front. And of course, as we've discussed, scale appeals to a much larger range of buyers, especially those multinational acquirers. The cons is that you can't forecast the risk in terms of the economic conditions that you might see between now and the 2 years when you're planning to go to market. And of course, the strategic buyers may actually fill the capability needs that you have now in the meantime, and therefore there are fewer buyers looking for the capabilities that you offer. So in terms of timing, if you looked at basing going to market on your FY26 numbers and went to market in spring of 2026, you could actually see quite a healthy enterprise value based on doubling your EBIT to 2 million. So if you doubled your EBIT, you could actually potentially quadruple the value of the deal.
Really? Wow.
So let's see. So in terms of a phased approach that we see over the sales process, quite a number of people think that half the issue is finding the buyer and the rest is easy, where in fact that really is only about 20% of the effort is preparing to go to market and engaging the acquirers. Getting to that LOI, that letter of intent, is really that beginning of phase 2, and most of the effort of a sales process is in negotiating the terms, going through the due diligence, working with the lawyers and your tax advisors to get a deal signed so that you've got your SPA, your share purchase agreement, nice and tidy. If you were thinking of how the timeline breaks up and what you might be preparing for, it's typically, as we said, 9 months or so. The preparation takes about a month. And in that case, what we're looking at is, aligning the shareholders' business objectives, really understanding that we have all the information that's going to be required in order to prepare the anonymized teasers that we typically make, as well as a business summary or an IM, an information memorandum that's shared with potential acquirers after an NDA is signed. And at the same time, we're creating a long list of potential acquirers so that we can agree to a short list. What's very important is not to take the spray and pray approach where you go to 100 people. It's much more important to have a really tailored and targeted approach that's anonymized to selected acquirers. And I think because of our relationships with so many acquirers around the world and domestically and regionally, we know exactly the deals that they're looking for. They've shared with us their acquisition strategies for the next 18 months. And I think that's really important to understand sign before you go to market. And really the prep takes about a month. Then we go to market. We start the introduction and initial approaches to selected acquirers with the objective to have chemistry meetings for you so that you're well briefed on that. And really that next 3 months from going to market and starting to engage till getting to an LOI, that letter of intent, that heads of agreement, which is in that black box, is about 3 months. So the prep and getting to an LOI is about 4 months. And you should know quickly in that period of time whether there's anyone who's shares the right values, shares the right culture, of course, offers you the right valuation for you to want to proceed. It's not uncommon for people not to be feeling that the deal is right for them. So you might pause after that 4 months, take the feedback of the chemistry meetings, what needs to change in order to align with people that are going to get better growth partners. It could be just that there's not the right cultural fit or some changes that you need to make in order to be more attractive. We do find that once an LOI is signed, which really is a non-binding agreement to give an acquirer about 3 months to do the due diligence. 95% of the time, a deal will go through after an LOI. And then that due diligence is another 3 months. And then once they're happy, most of that time is spent negotiating commercial terms, negotiating the warranties and indemnities, and finding and ironing out any differences so that you can get to a great deal that everyone's happy with. So again, that's why I thought I'd just give you that timeline so you can see how it really is about a month to prepare, 3 months in market to see if you can get an LOI, 3 months for due diligence, and then getting to the close of a deal can be up to 9 months, maybe a bit longer if you're looking at integration and the communication plan, both internally and externally. This is quite a long list that I thought I'd share with you, as not everyone has this together. This is just the initial information that we get from our agencies that we help go to market, or if people have approached you and said, hey, we'd love to buy you, but you do great things, but probably haven't sold too many of your businesses. This is the information list that is needed just to do the upfront prep. So it's quite extensive. I thought I'd share a little bit about the buyer landscape for you. We are seeing that the global acquired universe has really evolved from, say, 50 of the holding co's when we started about 20 years ago to over 1,500 buyers and quite a diverse range of territories. We found that over the 20 years, the landscape's really changed from acquirers seeking either buying for scale or strategic buyers coming into the market that were looking to expand into new geographies, that were really focused on the arbitrage of the deal. But then soon we found that with the digital tech evolution, that it was more about finding digital talents, and digital capabilities and competencies really became quite critical. And then, as I said, over the last 18 months, profitability has really been driving the buyer landscape. If we were going to break them up into groups, what we're finding that's driving the marketing and tech M&A, it's the traditional global marketing holding co's, followed by the independent marketing groups. We call them sort of the 21st century new economy networks. Then we, of course, have the consultancies and strategic technology teams that came in. And we're seeing quite a lot of private equity and PE-backed businesses enter our sector for M&A in the last 5 years. I think it's because PE finally have gotten their head around the fact that we have humans and talent as our assets, but as we're able to do more data and analytics and have more measurable work, they're finding that it's easier for them to enter into the market. A few notable deals are here for the global marketing holding co's. We're finding that they're really looking at M&A in order to contemporize their offer and ward off the competition from the new players that are entering. And what they're primarily looking for in general is performance marketing, help with their digital transformation, and strategic consultancies that hit at the C-suite level. They're actually having quite a buyer's resurgence at the moment. They're looking to plug the gaps that were left for them while they were being outbidded by really aggressive buy and builds that we've seen over the last few years. So they're quite active in the market at the moment. The indie marketing groups are really creating a 21st century agency structure, and they're eager to enter into new markets. So while Australia won't be their first acquisition, it might be their third or fourth. They're really looking to scale not only their products, but also their services, keen to acquire new clients and extend that global portfolio. At the moment, they're quite interested in the content-based AI skills. And while the AI is yet to really emerge away from the hype into true commercial application, they're seeing that the key is harnessing AI to really increase either the speed of which you do things or the efficiency of your talent and the processes that you're using to do your work. The consultancies, both the strategic and tech, here's some notable examples. They're really looking to grow capabilities. So their deal structures will often be retention-based, as opposed to the others that we just spoke about are more performance-based deals, which are focused on growth. Consultancies really are looking for agencies with a strong culture and have strategic consulting skills and talent within your team. They're looking for that tech that helps them to decouple revenue from labor and are really looking for those contemporary services that we talked about. At the moment, there's quite a renewed interest from the IT consultancies. They're actually wanting a much wider range of capabilities, from digital products and experience to commerce and e-commerce and data analytics. So it's an interesting space to watch. Private equity, as I said, has come into our area probably strongly in the last 5 years. There's quite a few PE-backed platforms that are doing roll-ups and buy and builds. They're really looking for scale and profitability above anything else when they look at an acquisition target, and that's in order to help them structure the buy and builds. In terms of skills, they're looking for those emerging technologies, again, AI, as well as AR and VR. They want real sector or client specialism, again, to fill gaps that they have in their own platform, strategic consulting skills, and of course, they're looking for scale. What's interesting about PE is that we're really seeing a shift in the PE deal dynamics for this year. We'll probably see fewer bolt-on acquisitions, as a lot of the PE-backed groups are more mature. They're sort of along that 4 to 5 year journey and getting much closer to exit either this year or next. And so what they'll do is they'll stop doing acquisitions in fear that it might complement what they have, and they're going to focus instead on integrating their operational efficiencies and also the integration of the businesses that they've acquired. However, there is still quite a lot of dry powder in the market. So we will see new PE platforms being created, especially in Australia, which will be interesting, as the funds that they're looking to deploy, they still have considerable capital at their disposal. So you'll sort of see the mature ones going to market and new ones being created. I'll talk more about private equity in our next session because it's a really interesting sector. When we look again at that building value model, when we take a private equity focus, we can see that their main interest is on profit and growth, followed by management. Yet the right offer or the clients or the systems are less important, although important in driving the value that they see in an acquisition. We are seeing that demand is outstripping supply. So certain agency segments still have more buyers than sellers, and this has often become that particular segment is underdeveloped. It might be that what buyers are looking for doesn't yet exist. Where it does exist, the sellers are reticent because maybe their numbers aren't quite as strong as they'd like to be. And of course, we do find that buyers can be fussy. In terms of what's hot in 2024, you can see that all of the marketing consulting services are of interest to varying degrees. It depends on, again, the acquirer and often what country and what region they're in. Clients, in terms of what they're looking for from an agency, it's attractive if there's B2B clients or you have technology clients. Health, financial services, and sports seem to be of interest at the moment. The skills, in terms of what's hot with acquirers, if we're going into more detail there, that strategic advice where you're able to access the C-suite of your clients and influence their business is quite appealing. Data is always increasing with interest, so whether that's first-party data or data analytics, automation through AI and machine learning, and the rest is quite critical. We're seeing quite a lot of interest in digital marketing and MarTech. So that's anywhere from personalization to B2B marketing, social media, performance marketing, retail media, tech-enabled media buying, CRM implementation, e-commerce, marketing automation. It's all quite important. Experience and commerce is quite attractive as well. So whether that's digital or CX, UI and UX, e-commerce platform development, Web 3.0 and the like, all of this is quite attractive. IT services and specialist tech, so cloud consultancy, Internet of Things, system integration, enterprise and mid-tech implementation is also quite attractive. And in terms of that technology, we're finding these key technology partnerships are also very attractive, although they change in order of importance. Salesforce seems to be flavor of the month at the moment, but we are seeing shifts in which tech partner becomes more attractive. So really, all of this combined with the general improving economic news, sort of despite the perilous state of the world more generally, it means that we can expect a really strong year for M&A across the marketing and technology service sectors, including media. I thought I'd also give you a global M&A trends view from acquirers so we can go beyond Australia a bit. And we did a recent Q2 2024 update, and really it shared some interesting insights into the resurgence of the M&A landscape. And we did anticipate that there'd be a bounce back for M&A, and that has arrived. That's evidenced by a steady stream of deal announcements that we're seeing this year. And behind the scenes, we're seeing that potential sellers are all getting their ducks in a row after quite a tumultuous 2023. For many agencies, the question really for you is that of timing. It's often tricky to know when to go to market because you don't want to necessarily have a deal that's based on last year's results if they were poor, because we found that quite a few agencies had poor quarters that would have been impacted by macroeconomic conditions that were really beyond their control. So from the discussions we're having with successful founders, many are feeling more optimistic about this year. So if we have a view through the acquirer's lens, what we're seeing is that, buyer demand is as strong as ever because we're seeing more buy-side mandates than ever. And most buyers we're talking to are planning multiple acquisitions this year and into next. And the biggest underlying M&A driver that you have to remember is that acquirers have this constant need to keep pace with the tech evolution. So they're continuing to search for those contemporary skills and technologies that fill the gap to what they actually have. And what we found is that some of the buyers had to stay out of the peak of the market that we had a couple of years ago and really waited for what they were hoping was demand for the agencies they wanted to buy and the prices and values that were being offered to normalize. But what happened is that their strategic needs still remained the same, and they became had quite a lot of pent-up demand. But they've now entered back into the market and they're looking for better value. Now, if we have a look at the global M&A trends that we're seeing with agencies, the irony is that while there's quite a lot of multiple buyers in the market for good mid-sized agencies and consultancies, the prices actually haven't come down. And this is due to that lack of supply to match demand. And that's creating a greater competition for those desirable targeted agencies that we explained what made somebody attractive earlier on. And the main reason for this lack of suppliers is that, as some of you would have experienced, that many agencies have had a tough start to the year. There are fewer pitch opportunities. Clients are delaying or actually cutting their budgets. And so this has actually created uncertainty over the agency's FY25 forecast. So they're a little bit hesitant to actually start in the sales process. And the good news in that is that while there's a lack of willing sellers over the last 12 months, this has really created a bottleneck for the buyers, and they're busy trying to persuade the targeted companies that wanting to acquire to engage sooner. So the benefit is that we're actually seeing much more creativity in deal structures designed to mitigate, the recent impact of hard trading conditions to persuade those reluctant sellers to engage. So what that means in practice is that we're actually likely to see quite a lot of deals being done over this summer and autumn, either based on the full year forecast or with a bit of a top-up payment after the year end if conditions improve. So for those of you that are founders potentially considering what your strategic options are, the news is that there's plenty of choice available to you. And while we won't see valuation spikes that we saw in the past in the foreseeable future, we are seeing that the multiples being offered are trending well ahead pre-pandemic levels, as much as 20% higher. So while the current economic situation is increasing the divide between future-proof, contemporary, financially robust agencies, those agencies that are really struggling are going to strive to adapt. They're really going to see quite a divide. So focus on how to have all of those levers going in the right direction. We did an interesting global acquirer research a few years ago, and we found that this was where they were looking to acquire at that time. So you can see that Australia is still interesting, not to everyone, but about 20% of the acquirers had targeted Australia. Now, if we look at that currently, what's increased is there's been an increase in interest in the US, both the West and East Coast, as well as much more interest in Japan and Southeast Asia, an understandable decline in Greater China, and Australia and UK and Europe is all steady. What's interesting about the shift in Australia because of the decline in Greater China in terms of acquisition interests is that we've moved from being seen as an outpost into a launch pad. So it's not uncommon for Australian businesses to look to get a foothold into Southeast Asia, as that's such a strong interest for many of the acquirers. Australia's got a great business structure. We're quite mature, much more Western in our approach. So they see acquiring Australia to move into Asia as a much more stable approach. So if we look at the Australian picture, what's lovely about what we do here is that we really punch above our weight. We're often technologically ahead of our peers and much more sophisticated than the rest of the APAC region. Again, a lot of acquirers have concerns around the fact that we're not able to internationalize, and so a small agency that's only Australian based won't be attractive to as many acquirers. Australia is a long way away, and some people just won't buy here, but a good 20% of them will find our market appealing. I thought I'd just share a little bit about what makes the best M&A deal for sellers, for founders. And it's really one where you have a buyer that's able to provide you something that you can't achieve on your own. So is there a scarce resource that they can help you get to faster, or is there growth that you're struggling with? Often the areas that you want to look at is, a growth partner for you could be great if you want to internationalize, or you want to offer broader services, or they can help you invest in technology that you don't necessarily want to bootstrap, or if you're looking to achieve more efficiencies or just simply client growth. We are finding that the deal structures are changing a little bit in terms of not only their length, but how they're designed. So a few years back, the typical deal was anywhere from 4 to 7 years, where now we're seeing the deals get shorter to 2 to 4 years. In terms of the deal structures, these are really tied to your objectives as a seller. Performance-based deals tend to be the most common, where you want to consider them as something where this is where your growth partner will help you grow. So your upfront payment is seen essentially as a deposit on the growth that you'll see over probably the 3 to 5 year earnout. Retention-based deals tend to be favored more by the consultancies. This is really about keeping your staff and your talent and your capabilities. They tend to be much shorter deals. You'll have a higher valuation up front, and you're incentivized in the earnout to keep your team and talent as much as 80% or higher. There's also deferred payment deals, where you're agreed to a deal value up front, and it's really a no risk deal, because you know what you're going to get. It's going to be based on the growth you've achieved to date, and then really just the payments deferred over a couple of years. What about mergers? Well, we're going to talk more about that in part 2, which we're going to have on the 9th of October. We find that mergers are difficult. Typically, we half-jokingly say that founders don't always play well together. Often a merger, when it's done to achieve scale, say 1 million EBITDA agencies merging together to become 2 million EBITDA, to be able to go to market, that often the integration can be quite tricky, and the cultural shift. So that can take as long as 12 months. And you often find that the growth you want to achieve with a merger could potentially be achieved easier with just being a little bit ambitious with your own growth plans. Obviously, you don't need 2 CEOs or 2 finance directors or 2 people in HR. So that integration can be a bit tricky with mergers, although there are quite a few good ones. So there's always possibilities. So if you're thinking about you want to sell, when is the best time to sell? We often say, please don't leave it too late. I've seen quite a number of agencies over the last few years that have left it too late, and it's quite devastating to watch. Many people think that the best time to sell is when you're at the top of your game, which isn't necessarily true. You actually want to make sure that you've got a good 3 years of gas left in the tank to grow if you're doing a performance-based deal. So it's important to sell when you're on the rise and not when you're tired. Although, retirement deals can often be done. Again, it's just who you want to sell to and what valuation you want to achieve. So if you're looking at a performance deal, I think the best thing to ask yourself is, how can I grow for the next 3 years? Not how can I get out? We often do work with maybe acquirers, with founders who might be a little bit tired, and we often will help to restructure an agency so that maybe that CEO becomes a chairman working 2 or 3 days a week, and we help to incentivize a really strong young new generation of management within the agency, so that potentially the new management is who talks to the acquirer, and the CEO, now chairman, takes a little bit of a step back when going to market. So that can work quite nicely as well. I think in short, you really just want to see that the deal is the beginning of 3 years of hard work and growth. Hopefully that's accelerated by the partner. So it's not easy, it's hard work. And you want to really focus on, in terms of how do you get the best value for your business. It's important that you have that succession plan. So we do, as I said, quite a lot of incentive schemes with potential to get a strong management team together. You want to make sure that you've got to focus on tools that you're investing to make you either better at what you do or more efficient. And just having long-term efficiency across all of what you do is pretty imperative. Final tips is, in terms of what's coming, Australia is edging close to a recession, and we still have higher cost of capital. Are we going to have more unpredictable times than the last 3 or 4 years? Well, potentially so, but what you have to remember, and what we love about being specialists, advisors in this sector, is the ability for reinvention. It's a real beauty that we see in owner entrepreneurs. They're always reinventing what they can do, and the value that they bring to clients. So we have great confidence in this sector and what you guys all do. So in terms of final tips, make sure you have your house in order. Know what you want as individuals and your partners and shareholders. And when you do find the right buyer, it's really important to look professional. So I'll remind you of this very impressive information list that you need before going to market. It's a nice place to start. Make sure you have all of these. But more importantly, we find that if above all else, have that wonderful ambition that had you launching and founding your business in the first place. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. Just reaching out to anyone. Does anyone have any questions at all for Julia? No, not a problem. We're happy to direct any questions to Julia after today. Thank you, Julia, for showing us such an insightful presentation. Leaders, please don't forget to log into part 2, how to get fit for scale, which is on October 9th. There should be a placeholder sitting in your calendars. This recording will also be housed on our YouTube channel, and we'll share that with you all later. Again, thank you, leaders, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks, Julia.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Julia.